Even the Doctor isn't always right. Welcome to WatchMojo UK, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 Doctor Who facts you always get wrong. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're looking at common misconceptions about the show and mistakes even the most ardent Whovians sometimes make. Number 10. It's always been Sci-Fi. These days, the show plays fast and loose with both historical and scientific concepts, and doesn't care a jot for what is and isn't possible, or what did or didn't happen.
We've got air. How does that work?
Just be glad it does.
It's pretty much what you'd expect about a show about a time-travelling alien, but things weren't always like this. It was originally pitched to the BBC as an educational programme, through which people could learn about scientific concepts and historical periods.
I don't believe it.
You really are a stubborn young man, aren't you?
All right, show me some proof. Give me some concrete evidence.
This was actually the motivation behind the chameleon circuit and the TARDIS changing its form, though it was eventually scrapped because it was deemed too expensive for production.
There's still a police box. Why hasn't it changed? Dear, dear. How very disturbing.
Number 9. TARDIS. After Doctor, TARDIS is probably the word heard most frequently in any given episode of Doctor Who, but a lot of uncertainty surrounds this legendary acronym.
The TARDIS can go anywhere.
TARDIS? I don't understand you, Susan.
Well, I made up the name TARDIS from the initials, time and relative dimension in space.
How it looks written down is one of the main questions, with some opting to capitalise every letter as though they stand for something, and others only capitalising the first letter as though the word stands on its own.
It's called the TARDIS, this thing. TARDIS. That's time and relative dimension in space.
Despite it being in the dictionary, there's still plenty of room for confusion. The other problem is whether it's dimension in space or dimensions in space, and it's been referred to as both over the years. Even the Doctor can't decide which one is right.
It's called a TARDIS, an acronym for time and relative dimensions in space.
Number 8. The Daleks were the original villains. They boast one of the most iconic designs of any science fiction monster, and have remained almost entirely unchanged since their first appearance on TV. But while they might be the Doctor's most famous adversaries, they weren't the first, contrary to popular belief. The Daleks didn't show up until the second serial, aptly named The Daleks.
They are attacking our instruments. We must keep alert. Yes.
The first serial was called An Unearthly Child, and mostly focused on an encounter between the first ever TARDIS crew and some violent cavemen who were trying to work out how to start a fire. It's not surprising that it's the Daleks people remember. Number 7. Ridley Scott designed the Daleks. Way back in the early 60s, now famed film director Ridley Scott was working at the BBC and was assigned to design the Daleks. It makes sense that an alien creature so feared and revered should come from the same mind as Alien, or does it?
No, that is not true.
In actuality, Scott was too busy to do the assignment, and the job was given to Raymond Cusick instead, the real man responsible for those one-eyed salt shakers with toilet plungers stuck on them. But as ridiculous as they are, we wouldn't change the Daleks for the world, so Ridley Scott's schedule clash may have been a blessing in disguise.
We are the masters of Earth. We are the masters of Earth. We are the masters of Earth.
Number 6. Fixed points in time. The concept of some points in time being fixed and some points being in flux doesn't really make sense. Surely a fluctuation event will inevitably lead to a fixed point, meaning it was never fluctuating at all, or a fixed point can actually be changed on a whim.
But this is fixed. This is a fixed point in time.
Fixed points can be rewritten.
No, they can't. Of course they can't. Who told you?
While the show does have a partial answer to this quandary in the form of the Reapers, who arrive when Rose changes a fixed point by saving her father's life, these villains are very inconsistent. We've never seen them again after this point, though you'd think they'd be following the Doctor around constantly waiting for him to mess up. Number 5, a Gallifreyan is a Time Lord. As Riversong proved, you don't have to be a Gallifreyan to be a Time Lord. And there was a point in history long ago before even Gallifreyans were Time Lords themselves. Time Lords are created by exposure to the time vortex. It just so happens that the Gallifreyans are elitists who don't want to share the gifts of the time vortex with anybody else, so they keep it all to themselves. River was able to become a Time Lord because she was conceived on the TARDIS, while Jenny proved herself to be a Time Lord capable of regeneration despite coming from a progenation machine. She never stepped foot on Gallifrey.
Hello, boys.
Number 4, the TARDIS is a time machine. The TARDIS does, of course, travel through time and space, but it really isn't a machine at all, and the Doctor probably just calls it as such because it's easier.
Now, tell me about your mode of transport.
The TARDIS. A sort of time-space machine.
TARDISes were in fact grown from bits of coral back on Gallifrey over prolonged periods of time, meaning that despite its appearance and function, the TARDIS is very much a living thing and not artificial in the slightest.
Can you build another TARDIS?
They were grown, not built.
The 10th Doctor explains this to Rose when he thinks his TARDIS is lost, saying that it would be impossible for him to build another one due to being grown, and Captain Jack keeps a piece of TARDIS coral on his desk. Number 3, the Doctor is a genius. Compared to every human and most aliens he encounters, he certainly is, but his intelligence has never been what sets him aside from the other Time Lords.
You'll either be angry if you kill me or... I'm a genius.
Villainous Time Lords the Doctor goes up against are usually much cleverer than him, including the Master, Omega, Rassilon, and especially the Rani, whose superior intelligence the Doctor is forced to admit on multiple occasions.
And who are you? The Rani. Stay back. This is idiotic.
While he does excel in some areas like physics and thermodynamics, he's largely a tearaway who flunked out of school, stole a TARDIS, and ran off. He never even learned how to fly it properly.
But, I tell you what, boys, we are incredibly clever. How did you do that?
Wasn't locked.
Number 2, the Doctor's age. He's been the hero on our screens for more than half a century. But does anybody actually know how old he is?
900 years of time and space, and I've never been slapped by someone's mother.
The 7th Doctor at one point gives his age as over 900, older than the ages the 9th, 10th, and 11th Doctors give for themselves. If things were murky in the classic episodes, they only get more complicated after 11 loses the Pons and apparently passes 300 years in isolation.
I've matured. I'm 1,200 years old now, plus I don't want to miss the Archers.
After that, it's anyone's guess how old the Doctor is, especially since 12 spent over 4 billion years stuck inside his own confession dial. At this point, it's unlikely that even the Doctor knows how old they are.
I'm the Doctor. I've lived for over 2,000 years, and not all of them were good.
Number 1, Doctor Who. Every time the Doctor meets a new person, they're asked what their name is and have to repeatedly reiterate that it's just the Doctor. Oftentimes, this prompts them to be asked Doctor Who, in reference to the show's title.
Don't be stupid! Who are you?
I'm the Doctor.
Doctor Who?
Just the Doctor.
But over the years, plenty of people have mistakenly said that the Doctor's name is Doctor Who. distressing any numbers of Whovians exhausted from having to explain this isn't the case.
Just go in there and tell her the Doctor would like to see her.
Doctor Who?
Just the Doctor.
As if to make things even more confusing though, for the entirety of the 4th Doctor's run, Tom Baker was credited in the titles as Doctor Who, though this practice thankfully stopped decades ago.
Doctor Who. Doctor Who. Doctor Who.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo UK and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.